This is Wandering Universe. I'll be exploring a fantastic and ginormous rock sculpture manufactured without using primitive tools. So, let's go exploring. Here we are. This is Google Earth, as you can see. That is planet Earth. Yes, you're sitting on it right now. So am I. I call it the Big Blue Marble. And as you can see, you're seeing South America right this very minute. Now, I'm going to spin this little ball around. Here we go. Okay. See this? This is Africa. Yes. Now, we're going to go in a little bit closer. So, you ready for a ride? Let's go. Okay. Going in. As you can see, all the divided countries. Now, we're going to go in a little bit further. Okay. Here we go. Now, we're not going to Sudan. We're going to Egypt. You guessed it. Okay. Let's go in a little bit closer, shall we? Okay. Here we are. Getting closer. Okay. Now, here's Aswan. That's Lake Nasser. Now, we're going to go to this place right here, Abu Simbel. So, I'll take you in. Get a little bit closer. It's very dry surrounding it, isn't it? Very dry. Very, very dry. Very little rainfall. Okay. So this is the actual reservoir. They built a dam nearby and they actually expanded the River Nile. And I'll talk about the relocation project. I'm going to show you a video about it later. But let's have a look at this site right here. So I'm going to get in closer so you can see what's down there. Okay. Yes. A lot of squiggly lines, veins, as you can see. There's a little creek bed right here, like a little stream comes out from the river. Okay. Let's go in a little bit closer to Abu Simbel. Right, we're going closer. Okay, here we are. That's the airport, and there's the temple. Now we're going to get in closer. Okay. So we're going to get in closer now. Right. So this is where it's situated. It kind of looks like an island with the bridge connecting to it. Isn't that interesting? We have that here too. Okay, getting closer. And now, this is what I'm going to do. So, I'm going to go in the search bar and I'm going to type in Abu Simbel Temples, Egypt. As you can see right here. And this is what you're going to see. There you have it. A 3D image of the very monument itself. Very dry place, isn't it? I had no idea how dry Egypt truly is. And the only thing that makes it bearable to live is the Nile River system. So you'll find out why later on in the video they built the dam, and it's not what you think. So while you're seeing a 3D image right here, we're going to go in a little bit closer, further into the actual monument you're going to see shortly. So when it comes to a stop or to a good position right here, I'm going to use the compass just to get it in the right position. So I'll just use it, hang on a sec, just get it in here. Okay, I'm going to take this little man, I'll go in a little bit closer actually, just so I know, and I'll take this little man and I'm going to put it right here. Here we go. This is where the magic happens. Voila, look at this. Ta-da! See that? That's where we're going today. I'll just zoom out a little bit. Just a little bit more. There it is. Just like magic. Let's not go on a merry-go-round with this one, okay? You all know what this is. Yes, Rameses II Temple Complex. Technically, it's a building structure. Call it what you will. A house, office, apartment, palace, whatever. I'm sure some of you have visited Abu Simbel, situated in the Aswan Governorate in Upper Egypt near the border of Sudan. It is a rock-cut sculpture that is in close proximity to the western bank of Lake Nasser, 230 kilometers southwest of Aswan. For some time, it's been known as the Nubian Monuments, that the area runs down the river to Philae near Aswan, Amada, Wadi es Subia, and others. The sculpture was carved from a mountainside rock wall in one go. No slices, dices, cuts, or gashes. It was done in one go and in one piece against one rock wall. So, compare this to the front rock wall at Petra. Does that speak familiarity to you? The assuming theory is that King Rameses II created the rock structure in the 13th century BC. I'm still trying to wrap my head over this. Ramses was no favourable man. He was a dictator and a tyrant. He governed his sociopathic nature to the public by being non-negotiable to foreign leaders. His stature wasn't huge, only 5'7". He didn't have a bodybuilder physique, and he was a real stud bull, a reproductive opportunist. He got himself a collection of wives and concubines, whoever gave him a boner. He spread his DNA far and wide to score as many future heirs fighting for his golden throne. He thought he was God's gift to women. The stone wall writing inside the palace speaks volumes. No doubt his ego verified it. He reigned for 66 years, way too long. I'm sure by then the masses were getting a bit tired of his antsy ways. But ancient Egypt's bank balance wasn't in a healthy state. He needed to do something to keep his high-maintenance royal lifestyle afloat. So, like all the other kings before him, he became a town planner and endorsed public building works to stretch out the false narrative of a booming economy. Nubia was under his control as his income was derived from the gold mines and trade goods. He supposedly proposed the building project of this grand palace to impress the Nubians and cultivate the Nubians to, believe it or not, Egyptian culture. This palace was dedicated to him and the small temple to his wife, Nefertari, not Nefertiti. Construction commenced in 1264 BC and completed by 1244 BC, and it lasted for 20 years. It is also known as the Temple of Ramses, beloved Amun, the sun god, as you can see in this wall relief. This monument has become an iconic figure in Egypt today. Okay, enough with the historical background. I'm going to dispute that later. Due to the environmental factors such as drought, less rainfall, sandstorms, and long periods of economic depression in Egypt, these grand palaces have been abandoned through the passage of time. By the 6th century BC, the sand had covered the statues up to their knees. It was left forgotten. Then along came a researcher, Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, in 1813, discovered the top frieze, which is mouldings or bands, lie horizontally across columns as bas-reliefs, and this is just one of them, of the main temple. Along with the Italian explorer, Giovanni Belzoni could not dig out the sand that covered the entry to the palace. Belzoni came back in 1817, rolled up his sleeves and removed most of the sand away to enter the complex with the help of the locals. Now, just bear with me here. I'll tell you what they saw back then, before the relocation program in 1968. I am skeptical that they have moved all the pieces, including the interior, to the new location. This complex comes complete with two temples, one dedicated to Ra-Harati, Petra and Amun. The four feature statues of Rameses II facade. The small temple is dedicated to Hathor, personified by Nefertari, one of his many wives. Only one entrance, nestled in between the four colossal statues to get inside. Most of the bas-reliefs depict sun worship. Inside features as a triangular layout. It contains many side chambers, such as the hypostyle hall is 18 meters long and 16.7 meters wide, supported by 8 huge pillars, as you can see in this before 1923 photograph, and there's a lot of sand covering the floor. This is taken before the sand was removed. Each of these pillars depict symbols of fertility, farming, afterlife, death, birth, marriage, life, food, and so on. I question whether life is really worth living if that's all it has amounted to for anyone. Then you enter the second pillared hall, 4 decorated pillars with offering scenes to the gods once again. Then you access to a traverse vestibule against a black wall that contains rock-cut sculptures of 4-seated figures of deities, supposedly. Now, what's most interesting is the solar alignment. The axis of the temple is positioned for the sun to penetrate the sanctuary by illuminating the room. Now, the dates that occur are October 22nd and February 22nd. Now, why are these dates important? This is far more than just lighting up a deity's world for a few minutes of its darkened life. It is more or less associated with the heliacal rising or star rise of Sirius. But I'll talk about that in a later video. Back to ancient Egypt. If you truly want to revive a dying economy, you don't start building projects during a drought. How stupid do you have to be? If ancient Egypt was going through a very long and painful economic depression that lasted as long as his reign, I think Rameses II was hoarding gold for himself. Very little gold mined coins were actually circulated to the savage peasants. Gold mined at Nubia came in limited supply and held in high value. So what did he do? He debased the gold to circulate to the masses that turned its value to a lower denominator. That means that feudalism played a huge role in keeping his royal lifestyle in check. Why? So he didn't end up bankrupt. And if you think this, you know what I'm talking about. And this were used to chisel, carve, and hammer these ginormous statues in one go. Think again. This is an incredibly high quality master craftsmanship done by highly advanced technology that greatly surpasses ours today. They've mastered it with true precision thanks to their advanced geometry that served its means when it sculptured their faces each side perfectly. We did not build this palace. The others did. And, by the way, did Ramses had a clue about star mapping? Did he know how to read the stars to chart his course by precisely locating the palace to a constellation in the night sky? No, he didn't. I'll mention briefly the relocation project that occurred in 1968. The entire palace complex was going to be submerged forever if something wasn't done. Now, before I show you the video, this is a scale model of how it looks today. If you look inside the tank, water tank right there, that's where the palaces used to be, where they were. Then they moved it just further up and further away inland, and they built an artificial man-made, should I say, dome to mimic the rock wall underwater, as you can see here. Now, this is a video I'm going to show you about the relocation program that happened in 1968. This is quite a detailed documentary that goes from the beginning to the end, step by step, how they managed to plan out the pieces once they cut them and then transport them carefully to the actual man-made sites. So this is quite an interesting video. I've had a look at it myself. It'll never go back to its original form. Okay, once you ruin a good thing, what can you do? But they had no choice but to save the monument. Otherwise, you're going to have to go on a scuba diving exhibition, and I don't think everybody's experienced scuba diver. So what they've done is that they just move it to another location. I know what you're going to see. Some bits are a little bit sad, but it is as it is. So let's commence watching some bits of the footage, and I will comment in between.
The area in which this rapidly growing people can live and grow their food is limited to the narrow strip of fertile land on either bank of the Nile. Egypt's famous granary has now become too small. By the construction of the Aswan Dam, the Egyptians want to obtain new areas of cultivation. By damming the waters of the Nile, an enormous reservoir will be created. In future, it will be possible for more land to be irrigated, for agricultural production to be increased, and for electric power to be generated for the build-up of the country's own industry.
So the powers that be wanted to create a dam. I don't know why. I don't think it was really a worthwhile project. I don't think it really increased agricultural production much for its economy that already was in a economic depression for a long time anyway, even during the 60s, especially during the 70s of peak oil. So as you can see, this is just demonstrating what they're going to do of salvaging the temples itself. Now I'm going to show you more the salvage operation, the relocation of the temple.
Construction of a cofferdam to protect the temples from flooding while dismantling is taking place. The facade to be banked up with sand to protect the statues of Rameses. Shoring the interior of the temple with steel scaffolding. Removal of the rock surrounding the temple until a wall thickness of 80 centimeters is reached. Dismantling the temples in blocks of 10 and 30 tons, and removal to a safe storage area well clear of the high water mark. Reassembly of the temples on a site 65 meters higher up than the original location. Erection of a reinforced concrete shell to support the rock load which the roof of the temple can no longer withstand.
Okay, so that's the plan, how they're going to relocate the temple, as you saw in front of you. Quite a complex plan, actually. It wasn't very easy to actually execute it. It took a lot of time, a lot of consideration, because they didn't want to ruin the monument if they don't execute it properly. So this had to be professionally done, and thanks to that planning, now it looks like the original, how it used to be, but still it's not as good. But this just demonstrates how it was executed back then. Now I'm going to show you more of how they actually took it apart, dismantled it.
More and more of the rock material over the temples is removed. Now only 2 cavities in the massive rock face show where the temples are. 2 derricks are already waiting to take away the sawn-out blocks. Working in this heat and dust is very hard, but they're already getting closer to the temple walls. The wall surrounding the great temple is now reached. This is where the most difficult part of the job begins. The finest cuts on the surfaces can only be made by hand. The rock is so brittle that contact with water would cause it to crumble, so no water must be used when sawing. The cuts through...
It's interesting that we're still using the technology that was used 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, and this just demonstrates that it is possible that we have constructed the pyramids. But boy, look how many hours that we had to sweat at busting our chops just to build 1 block per day. So, you know, like I said, it just remains to be skeptical. Okay, I'm just really not entirely convinced that we could do it. One block, 2.5 minutes each round. Okay, 2.5 minutes, done, and then move on to the next block. I don't think it's possible using these tools that you see in front of you, but let's continue.
The temple's ceiling must be made with mathematical precision. The ceiling of the temple is cut away block by block. In the cavities that are left, the shoring structure becomes visible. The cut-out blocks are transported to the storage area. For safe transport, these gigantic blocks must be held firmly in position. The drill holes, which take the anchor trusses, are filled with synthetic resin and sand. When it sets, it ensures the necessary adhesion, so that the load can withstand any possible strain. There are more than 1,000 temple blocks and about 7,000 from the rock framework round the temple. Each of them must be so marked that it can be found later without any long time-wasting search.
Okay, before we go on with that, as you can see the technology, a lot of back-breaking work there. They spent hours and days and weeks, just night and day. They did it in 24-hour shifts, night and day, just sawing carefully with almost precision, almost without a millimeter off, but I reckon it was anyway, just to accurately saw it in half without damaging the entire sculpture. Okay, this was a very delicate operation what they did, so it's pretty ingenious, I will say. I'll give credit to that, but still, what you're going to see might break your heart a little bit.
The mighty heads of the Rameses Colossus protrude out of the sand. In sawing out the heads of the pharaoh statues, only very few cuts could be made. The faces remain intact. Foil is used to prevent the cutting surfaces from crumbling.
This is how they cut away piece by piece, the face, the head, and all the other body parts to the actual new location. And as you can see, they're using cranes here. They couldn't really, in hindsight, even lift a 300-ton block, limestone block. It would have been impossible. So they had to lift these up to 20 tons, maybe 30, which is its limit. But they can only do 20, 25 tons, maybe up to 30 at a time. Otherwise, the cranes are just going to break.
When cutting out the faces, work had to continue day and night without a break. Any interruption in the cutting might have caused the soft rock interspersed with hard seams to crumble, owing to the change in tension.
Now we're going to continue to see how they transport it using cranes, levers, pulleys, and how they hoist it very carefully onto the truck, the back of the truck, platform, and then they drive it all the way to the storage area. Just watch.
And this is the moment that journalists and press photographers have waited for all night. Rameses loses his face. last majestic look at the bare facade before the special low-load transport vehicle carries him to the storage area.
What I'm going to show you next is how they put the whole thing together, block by block. It's still hard work, and they had to do it precisely. If it's a millimeter off, the whole thing will topple over. So they had to do it so carefully. Watch.
The construction site on the bank of the Nile is deserted. The bulkhead is submerged. Up on the plateau, the temples awaken to new life. The famous facade of Abu Simbel assumes its former shape again.
Okay, now you're going to see the very end of how it looks all pieced together like a giant jigsaw puzzle. So, and then they add sealants and other things to hide the cuts that they made, so it looks as good as the original. I just call that cheating, really, but that's the way it is. So I'll just show you the end result.
On the Great Temple, some restoration work is necessary. Its facade is made crack and weather resistant. After all, it has to survive further thousands of years. Once the joints have been sealed, it'll be impossible to see that the temples had once been cut up into separate blocks. After removing the protective foil, the joints are treated with a paste of sand and cement, which is blended to conform to the color of the surrounding stone. The protective foil is carefully softened so that the brittle surface of the stone doesn't adhere to it when it is drawn off. Here, archaeologists keep a watchful eye on every operation to ensure that the stone doesn't absorb too much moisture, which might cause discoloration of the surface. The work of reassembling the temples is completed 18 months sooner than expected. The godlike pharaoh again sits enthroned high over the waters of the Nile, in which he would have been submerged had it not been for the aid of our modern world of technology.
And as you can see, voila, all done, pieced together like one giant jigsaw puzzle. So I'd say well done to them, I give them credit for it, but it'll never be as good as the original. That's the way it is. So whilst they were doing this, here's the interesting part. Whilst they were undergoing the relocation process, did they miss something behind, like underground tunnels, chambers, further beneath the temple? I know it's all underwater now, in the dam, so whilst in the process of cutting, sawing, and dismantling the sculptures, did they know something like other things beneath this splendor, like rooms, tombs, anything? Is there something they're not telling us? Here is a takeaway for you before you come back for more goodies next time round. Now take this footage of Mount Rushmore National Memorial in Keystone, South Dakota, United States of America. Here is a video, as you can see in front of you, to demonstrate how these faces and bodies were actually sculptured. Now, ask yourself this: did the techniques used back in Egypt are similar to the techniques that we use today to sculpture these faces? Think about it. Let's watch this video. Okay, you're about to see the technique, the actual thing that they used to blast the rock off the mountainside. See, they got to drill a deep hole, bore it into the rock first to place the dynamite, and then you're going to see what happens next, okay? So this is very back-breaking, dangerous work. Okay, here it comes. So that's one part that they blast away. There's another part coming. So during 1927 to 1934, as you can see in this footage, they used modern machinery like drills, hammers, jackhammers, and dynamite, and lots of it, to blast out tons and tons of mountain rock from the mountainside. And this video just demonstrated for you in order to accurately measure out from the head down to the neck, the shoulders, and all the way to the torso. So that's how they sculptured these four presidents back then. This is the footage I'm about to show you, so you'll see what I mean when you compare the difference between the Abu Simbel temples for Rameses II, the building project, how they did it compared to our modern methods, what we did today. So just take a look at this footage. As you can see, they're using cranes, dynamite, the tools that we use today, even when it comes to carving out a roadside to build a highway. So it's like carving out the sides of a mountain in order to build the highway in between. And that took a lot of time to do the face of George Washington. They had to use other drills to do the polishing. They're still trying to finish off the project. At that time, they were running out of money. They couldn't pay the workers anymore, so they just said, all right, we'll just finish it off from here. So as you can see, they're just doing last-minute patch-ups. This is the end result. Once they've done all the patching and fine detail and the polishing, this is what it looks like in the end. And I've actually been there twice, and it looks pretty good actually, especially in broad daylight. It's not too bad. So there you have it. So compare that to 3,500-4,000 years ago. Interesting. From this footage I just showed you, it actually took 400 workers to master the task, and you can see the difference in methods of how they sculptured the faces on them and the palace. So can you imagine back in Ramses' time, they would have had a ball using dynamite as a new technology to blast granite or limestone from a mountainside? Oh, they would have had an absolute fun with it. Granite is a hard rock, and bronze chisels, as you well know, are no match for the techniques used at Mount Rushmore. Okay, and you understand why. And ironically, the incentive of creating these sculptures is almost in line with what Ramses had in mind, and that was promoting tourism in the area, face it to the sun, and a monumental sculpture to honour the heroes of the West. Coincidence? I think not. Although the mountainside is made of sandstone, the 4 statues at the front entrance in the before photos were done in one cut, in one go. It's so high quality, these sculptures, not even a master stonemason today would match its workmanship. It's so masterfully done, their primitive tools simply couldn't achieve the geometric precision. Compare that to Petra, side by side in this photograph. If you think we have reached our best of our building technology, think again. The only driving force that has greatly modernized our engineering style is oil. This enabled us to build bigger and better than our predecessors. It's cheap and energy efficient, which enables machines to do the job of manufacturing mass-produced products in less time than using human labour. These structures at Petra and Abu Simbel were done using highly advanced technology beyond the quantum level. Something like this, but on a much grander scale. Let this be food for thought. In the next video, I'll be exploring a peculiar temple complex that contains writing that might shine a light on who built the pyramids. That's all for now.